There are voices, some soft, some loud, some passionate, and some proud. These are the voices you've heard over and over throughout your life. They have followed you along your journey. Through life's trials and tribulations, they've never abandoned you. They offer remembrance of lessons taught, yet never forgotten. They echo sentiments that have guided and helped to shape the very person you are today. These voices see beyond the surface. They scout potential and ignite the blaze that sets this world in motion. They inspire millions of dreams throughout the world every single day. These are the voices that capture the passion.
Hi, my name is Alex Dijon, and welcome to the Capture the Passion podcast. This podcast is meant to help inspire you and show you the power and potential that education has in our lives. Not only from a student's perspective, but also from the perspective of educators, and how education can transform everybody's lives. Hopefully, by listening to this podcast, you'll get inspired and validated on what good education can be. Do me a favor, and I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to think about the worst teacher you have ever had. You know the one I'm talking about. Maybe you had a teacher who would lock the door because you were 10 seconds late to class. Or you had a teacher who would berate you because the dog ate your homework and it was real and your teacher just didn't believe you. So many times in our lives, we're so used to negativity and we're so used to being berated and belittled. You may have had that situation in your own life. If you remember very distinctly that worst teacher you had, I want you to take a second and think about how they made you feel. Now, I want you to think of the opposite of that. I want you to take a second to think about who the best teacher or teachers you ever had. And you might know about them as well. The ones who really inspired you. The ones who validated you. The ones who made you feel that you could do anything and be anything that you wanted to be. That feeling, that memory, that is what makes education worth it.
Capture the Passion Podcast. Well, Mr. Alex Dijon, that was quite the introduction you had to this podcast. And you know what? While you were talking, I was thinking to myself of that old adage that goes, there is no such thing as a bad teacher. And I feel like you kind of proved that with, your introduction here, because if you really want to get into teaching, I think that your experiences matter. And the really interesting thing is that if you have a bad teacher, they will influence you just as much as the positive ones. Because when you're standing in front of a classroom, you'll know what you don't want to do, and then you'll know what you would like to implement, right? So in theory, they both pretty much helped you a lot, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Although I would counter with, and you know me, I always like to be against the grain. While I totally agree that both good and bad teachers can have a profound impact on people and the rest of their lives, I do think that bad teachers do have a bad impact on students. I myself remember in the past having teachers who would always talk about how important teaching and education is, and I remember very distinctly in high school, I had this one teacher, they were my language teacher, and they loved being a teacher. And every time there were students who needed help, the worst students in the class, that teacher would not help the worst scored students. She was so enamored to talk with the students who were the A students, the B students, the ones who were already excelling in class, that for me it seemed that I felt marginalized and I felt that nobody cared about me because she was more focused on just the concept of being a good teacher rather than actually being a good teacher.
So you're saying that there's discrimination happening in the classroom with bad teachers?
I wouldn't say discrimination.
I would. Are you kidding me? You look out into your students that you have in that class for that semester, you're going to tell me that teachers don't discriminate based off of a variety of different reasons, and what you've just talked about, that being one of them?
Oh, absolutely. Okay, that is true. When you said discrimination, I thought it was more sort of intentional. I was thinking about it as more of a passiveness about how teachers who say that they care, but they really only care about the good students,
Oh
or they
man.
only care about the easy parts of the job.
I
But
guess
you're totally right.
this has got to be the cynical part of me because I tend to believe that it's both, right? It's intentional and it's unintentional. I think and it's unfortunate, but there are certain things that exist within the minds of certain teachers, and I think that there's some things that have been embedded in them since they were small, right? Especially with our older faculty that really impact certain student demographics.
Yeah, and not even older faculty. I think faculty and teachers who have a certain ideology. Because in terms of discrimination, I think what some teachers have is something called deficit thinking, where teachers expect students to have certain skills going into the class, and they think, oh, this student only reads at a certain grade level, or this student is speaks English as a second or third language, so they can't grasp the material as well. And then the teacher goes, you know what? That's why schools have tutoring systems. That's why there are counselors. From a teacher's perspective, some teachers who have deficit thinking will say, you know what? This student has a problem. They can go somewhere else to get help. And I think that's what a big problem in education is now, and why we need better teachers.
It's a good point. It's a good point. Definitely. It's interesting because right now you're hearing perspectives from, both Alex and myself, and we're both instructors at the community college level. But luckily here at Capture the Passion, we try to give you, differing perspectives. And like I said, luckily we do have a student here with us today that can actually shine a light on this topic, from their point of view. So let's go ahead and welcome in Breanna Reyes. And Breanna, if you want to go ahead and, get the applause for you. If you want to shine a light and to kind of tell us a little bit about what you think about this topic.
Well, thank you for introducing me. I had difficulty finding or thinking of a bad teacher because, teachers are human. There's going to be positive qualities and negative qualities that we see in them. But I did have an experience with a bad teacher, I guess you would say, in elementary school. Like Alex was saying, discrimination in the classroom setting. If you weren't one of the popular kids or one of the best scoring kids in the class, the teacher would kind of put you aside, and she would buy food for the students that were her favorites, and she would take them out for extra recess. While me, on the other hand, I would stay inside to clean tables.
This is a direct form of discrimination, by the way. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was hard for, I think, the students that had to stay in, because we just noticed how the students who were not even always the better qualifying, I guess on tests and stuff, but the students that were just more popular, more friendly to her, the kids that would, I guess, kiss up to the teacher, she would just treat them differently than us. And it happened for a while. I didn't want to tell my mom because I felt awkward about it, but eventually a group of us students that didn't want to continue cleaning tables, we did refuse one day, and she took us up to the principal, and I did end up getting a referral for it, which doesn't make sense. What? It's crazy. But it was a big fiasco during that year. She did end up getting fired for what she did in the end, which was good. But it was after I finished my school year with her.
That's blatant, though.
Yeah, completely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the worst part, too, is that I don't even think that's sort of a special case. I remember a couple years ago reading a study or hearing a study on how students of color are twice or three times more likely to be sent to the principal's office or to get a referral for things versus other students who are not given demerits in the same way. And it's crazy to see on how at almost every education level, how some students are not only perceived in a certain way, but then they're put into a certain box and just are put into a certain role that they have to go to.
And how long ago was it? What grade was this?
I was in third grade, so I was about
third grade, and look at the
8.
scar it's left.
Yeah.
So we're still talking about that to this day.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? Since we're sharing stories here, I just thought about this too. It's the reason why I know what an alcoholic smells like, right? Or when someone is drunk or they're coming down from being intoxicated, right? Is because my 6th grade teacher would always show up intoxicated.
They were the stereotype.
Sixth grade teacher in Evergreen Elementary School. I'm putting you on blast right now. In Plainfield, New Jersey, right? Because I grew up in New Jersey. And I remember, and I would ask my mom, I'm like, what? She smells weird. Right? She just smells weird. And I remember all the students, we would have to go up and we'd have to turn in our paperwork at her desk. And when we would walk up to her desk, it was so strong, but we couldn't identify the smell. And it wasn't body odor, you know? And it wasn't until I was an adult where I smelled it again, right? Because, you know, of my own actions, that I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is that same smell. It triggered that memory that I had from when I was in elementary school. It was just, you know, I guess that stuff happens, right? That the students drive them to drink.
Yeah. Yeah, right. It's that sort of type of like the teacher has like a little flask in their desk and then like midway through class.
Listen,
like,
we're talking early 90s, right? So yeah, I'm pretty sure she had a flask in her desk, right? And it probably wasn't even looked down upon.
I mean, I got a feeling some teachers probably still do that now or something like that. Because teaching, I think, has just only gotten harder. Although I personally think I have had a totally opposite reaction to my sixth grade. In fact, one of the things that actually made me want to be a teacher was my sixth grade teacher. And I remember this very distinctly because my father had just passed away and my family had moved because we couldn't like afford the spot we had lived in. So we went to a new neighborhood. And I'm doing a shout out to Hurley Elementary, and I feel so bad. I was having a really difficult time adjusting. I didn't know anybody there. I was one of the few black kids at the school. It was mostly a Latinx population. I don't speak any Spanish or anything. And, you know, it was a community elementary school, so the kids already knew each other at that point, and it was really hard for me. But I had this one sixth grade teacher where pretty much every lunch he would notice that I would not talk to anybody. And I was still grieving over the loss of my father. So it was very difficult for me to not only socialize, but to even express my feelings. And this teacher, every lunch, he would get pizza, and he would keep the classroom open, and he would just tell the students, hey, if anybody wants to just be in here, we can hang out and chat. And I remember going in there for the first few weeks, or the first month maybe, just going in, eating pizza, and then leaving to be alone. And about a month in, he asked me what my other classes were like, and I started opening up. And I remember after that, for the entire school year, every lunch I would be in there with the teacher and a couple other of my classmates, and that teacher was actually able to get me to socialize. He got me to help me get over the loss of my dad, help me make friends. Some of the best friends I have right now are friends I made in sixth grade, and it would not have been possible were it not for that teacher.
Aw, it's a tearjerker moment.
I know, such a wholesome
Do you have an
story.
experience like that, Breanna?
Not exactly. I mean, I've had positive, like situations with teachers. Like every year, the teacher that I think made me or like swayed me to become a teacher was my second grade teacher. Just watching her interact with the students and be goofy, and she was shuffling across the floor one day, and I looked at her, and I was like, I want to be exactly like her. Like, I want to have fun, but also teach students and like make sure that they have fun. Like, I just liked how she taught us, and ever since then, I've just wanted to be a teacher. Second grade, yeah.
What made you want to be a
You have
teacher?
an amazing memory. The first story was from third grade.
I know.
The second one was from second grade. My goodness.
Yeah, good for us.
Wow. My path is not traditional at all. I mean, I never wanted to be a teacher, right? That was never even on my radar. And it actually wasn't until I was in, undergrad where, you know, in different classes I was taking, they would ask you to share, or you'd have to give a presentation, right? And me going back as an older student, I had a lot of life experience. So whenever I would share to the class, I would bring in my stories and I would bring in my experiences. And, you know, a couple of students took notice and a couple of teachers took notice. And, you know, they said that, this would be a good opportunity for you. So they opened the door for me for my graduate program to actually teach some classes of public speaking and allow me to kind of have a platform to, you know, really impact student lives. And I'm not gonna lie, there's a little narcissism to being a teacher, right? So you kind of like that. You like the stare. You like that feeling of being in front of people and, you know, of the ability to help them. And when I received my first semester or first quarter at the time reviews, and they were positive, it's almost like wrestling. So they say in wrestling, if it's a hard sport and you train and you train and you train. But the thing about wrestling is that if you lose your first match, you'll hate the sport forever. If you win your first match, you'll love the sport forever. And I think teaching was the same way for me, in that when I received those first, reviews from the students, and they were like, he's awesome, he's this, he's that, right? And they were like, oh, he's so motivational, and don't tell him he's great because it'll go to his head, right? Right? Like those kind of things, it really kind of jazzed me up. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. I'm making an impact. And prior to that point in my life, I was searching for a career that not only paid, but also had impact, had significance. Because for me, it's always been about what type of impact are you leaving on our community. And that's what's important to me. It's not necessarily the money, right? And so I was able to find that in teaching and through that program at Cal State LA.
Cool. Well, then let me ask, what is your philosophy to teaching? Because I really like on how you said that it wasn't until you were an undergraduate in college that you really found the passion to be a teacher, and that when you're a graduate teaching assistant or associate, that when you taught your first class, that's how you captured the passion right there. But from there, it's what's your teaching philosophy? Because at least for me, I'm sort of a similar path. I didn't always want to be a teacher. In fact, I personally dislike school in general. The only reason why I like college, I know this sounds really weird because I'm a teacher, right? And I'm a college teacher. But like you, I went to college. I went to community college right out of high school, but I didn't really like it, so I stopped going to focus on work to make money, but that started to stagnate. So then I went back to community college after a couple of years, and it was when I was a student at Pasadena City College, I took a small group communication class. And in that small group communication class, it was still to this day the best class I've ever taken. Because unlike regular classes in which we sit down for like 40, 50 minutes, the teacher lectures to explain material, and we might talk about it, that for the small group communication class, the teacher had us make an event on campus. And the entire class is just, okay, first couple weeks, what's the event? Let's brainstorm ideas. Let's eliminate things that we don't like. Let's highlight the ones that we do like. Then the second 2 weeks was, okay, let's do a cost analysis. How much will it cost to do? Other 2 weeks, okay, what are the procedures we have to get? What's the paperwork we have to fill out? And that class was so active learning. It was so much us doing stuff. I was like, oh man, is this what education is supposed to be like? Is this what college is supposed to be? So that specific class really showed me how powerful education can be, and that's what made me want to be a college teacher. So my philosophy is that learning should be fun. What's your teaching philosophy?
I agree completely with you. I think learning should be fun, and I think that we need to implement or incorporate more active strategies in the classroom. I took a similar course, not in the sense of the all the activeness that was going on in your small group communication class, but I took a course that was it was intercultural communication, and I had a professor. I don't want to name the professor, but I remember where they basically just had us choose a chapter in a textbook and create a PowerPoint. And then each week we had to present that PowerPoint. And so the students taught the class instead of the actual instructor. And I thought that this was the biggest cop-out I had ever seen in my life, right? from this teacher. And this teacher literally sat back and did absolutely nothing and just had us teach every single chapter. And then he made it popcorn style. So we didn't know who was going to teach that day. So we had to basically outline every chapter to be ready for our spontaneous presentation. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, I would never in my life do this. And then I also thought to myself how much this class cost, right? I never realized how much I was spending on education until I took that class. I thought, this is crazy. I want a refund, right? And so me personally, I think to myself, I would never do something like that to my students, right? Because everything needs to be, like you said, an active learning environment. People learn by getting hands-on. Very rarely are we really going to digest theory, right? Unless we're actively implementing that theory in the real world and in the business world. So that's what I try to do, right, in my classrooms, is I want to try to make learning fun, but sometimes it's very difficult. So one of the things that I think as instructors we have to do is we have to put on that face, right, and put on the show in the classroom and engage students and ask questions and get them involved in active discussion, because I think discussion can be just as much fun as having some type of an activity that they're doing. However, it must be controlled, right, from the teacher's perspective. You have to have an idea of where this discussion should go, and you have to be able to guide that discussion, because if you can't, then it's just going to kind of go off the rails,
That's a good point.
But very similar to what you said is I think that it should be fun. And Is it always? No, because there's certain chapters that you have to just go through, right? And you just have to grind out. But I try my best to make it as fun as possible.
Well, let me ask this, and let me ask you this, Breanna, because Eric and I are both college teachers, so our viewpoint and our approach to teaching is very specific to our demographic of adults.
However,
Yeah.
I'd like to add to my resume that I am an elementary teacher as well. Because over the past 2 years, I have taught kindergarten, and I'm now teaching first grade. To my 6-year-old son, yes.
There we go. That's it, right?
Thank you, pandemic.
Man, that was a fantastic way of explaining it because it was like, oh, my God, you have to do all this stuff. And now it's like, yes, to your son. But I think you're still right. You know, it's about how do you explain information to children.
Yes, it's
and even
hard.
though you're like your college teacher,
It's
it's
hard.
you had to really adjust to it.
I have so much respect for K through 12. My goodness, right? And it more now for K through 6, I would say, because I think K through 6 does not get the just deserves. Just managing the personalities in the classroom and managing, you know, the little ones running around and paying attention and all those things. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really interesting about, and this is what I wanted to ask you, Breanna, and I think you might not have a lot of time left because I know you wanted to be an elementary teacher. It's, how do you get kids to teach? Because for me personally, I don't want to teach children. What makes you want to teach kids, or how do you teach children?
I mean, I've had a lot of experience with it, whether it was like volunteering at daycare facilities. Right now, I'm a Bible study teacher for first,
Very
second,
cool.
and third grade. So it's just the experience that I've had, and I think I've just gotten like good at it in a sense. I mean, I still got a lot of learning to do, but I just have found, I guess, my grade level. I just enjoy being with them.
You found
and
your
just,
pocket.
Yeah, they're just so much fun. They're so energetic. They are so hungry to learn, and they're just so happy. And I think that's what I like the most about it, because they are so positive and they just want to learn what you are teaching them.
Oh, man. But I think you don't give yourself enough credit. But we'll stop right there. Thank you so much for coming in, Breanna.
Yes.
We'll take a break real quick.
Have you ever thought of teaching? Hello, my name is Leah Martinez. I am your interim project manager and director of the Community Partnerships for Teacher Pipeline, or CPTP, at Rio Hondo College. CPTP's mission is to increase the number of teachers of color. Our goal is to recruit 100 students or more and match them with teachers who have already gone through the pipeline to inspire, motivate, and support students like you who are interested in exploring or pursuing a teaching career. CPTP offers wraparound student support and services, including a dedicated mentor, a student success coach, and a stipend pay if you complete the program's requirements. This project is supported by the U.S. Department of Education's Supporting Effective Educator Development, or SEED grant, in partnership with the Center for Collaborative Education, along with 2 other community colleges, Cerritos College and El Camino College. Interested? Go to our website at www.riohondo.edu/iteach to follow the 2-step process to apply, or simply scan this QR code.
Hey everyone, I'm excited to tell you about an all-new education podcast. I'm the host, Alex DeJean, and in each episode, I will talk with inspiring and thought-provoking guests to stimulate your mind and to give you a greater understanding of the power and potential education has for not only students, but as a career option. Hopefully, each episode will also give you a glimpse of what it takes to be a great educator, and together, we'll capture the passion. Listen and follow along on YouTube, iTeach, Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora, or wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to Capture the Passion. I'm Alex DeJean, and with me is Alia Medrano. Alia, do you mind introducing yourself and tell us what you do?
Hi, everyone. My name is Alia Medrano. I am the Student Success Coach here for the CTPT and Education under Rio Hondo College. I also am a Student Ambassador for the College of Education at Cal State Long Beach.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. So earlier we were talking about really bad and really good teachers. So I wanted to sort of ask you the same thing. What is a really bad or good teacher that you remember?
Yeah, so I grew up coming from English language learner. And so that itself is just like, oh, okay, well, your English isn't good. and all that. So I was automatically stereotyped into. But one thing about like, I came from like Puerto Rico where we do speak English.
Oh,
So there goes that stereotype right away where I was just like, no, I speak it. I'm just not as fast. In my head, it was such a hard time that I had to literally process Spanish to English. And it took a while, so it took me a while to like answer or anything else like that. But there goes that pressure of being like in fourth grade where it's just like, well, they want the answer fast.
Yeah.
And even though it's like, it's not like some of the teachers fast of what, and it goes into like what definition is, what is a teacher fast and all. But growing up too, I wasn't the best at math too. So I was also like, I was told by my high school teacher, he's like, well, you're not going to accomplish anything.
What?
He was so stereotyping. He goes like, you're probably going to end up in welfare and have multiple children and all. I've been there and I'm just like, oh my God, this is a teacher telling me this.
that is
So
crazy.
it took me serious. I kind of took it serious. At the same time, I'm just like, I'm still trying to figure out life itself.
Yeah. No, but I think it's really interesting on how you talk about that because the previous person we had also had similar experiences of a teacher at such a fundamentally young level being told things that were just really scarring and just gives really bad experiences. It's really messed up, like, to hear what you've gone through. And your whole thing about the fact that English is a second or third language for you, have you ever seen the show Modern Family?
I have seen somewhat bit because I feel like Sofia Vergara.
Yes.
I can kind of relate to her because she had that accent. We live in Los Angeles where it's one of the most diversity, but we have the population of minorities. It doesn't matter like where they're from. Some people have this accent, and I love that she just made something of it and
Yes.
all. And she's gorgeous, she's natural, and she's just like, she's so funny too, but no matter what, she sticks to the roots with her accent.
Yeah.
And I love it.
And it reminds me because what you're talking about reminds you, there's one scene in that show where she goes, do you have any idea how smart I am? Like, and how slow I have to go because I have to translate everything? I'm so much smarter than you, or something like that. And it's really like, it goes to show on how people's intelligence and how people express themselves and how people are not really given opportunities to excel because of the situation that they're in.
Right. And also when it comes to knowing a different language, for example, my Spanish, I have to think about, is it male or female? That includes when I'm talking in Arabic too. When I think of Arabic, I have to break it down, male or female. So I have to, in my head, there's this longer process. The window when you're waiting, that's the circle. It's like, okay, you're back to 404.
So you've had really bad experiences, and it's so crazy that the other guest that we had a very similar one. What about good experiences? Because you're here at Rio Hondo College, you're part of the CPTP program, you're also at Long Beach, Cal State Long Beach to become a teacher. What made you want to be a teacher?
I wanted to be a teacher because, don't get me wrong, I did have some good ones. My best one actually were my coach athletes because I was a top player in my sports and all.
Booyah.
But one of the things is that I actually met someone who was a teacher, and she was like, oh, I need help with translating. And I was just like, oh, okay, cool. And she worked for LAUSD. And she worked in the city of Carson and all. And she's like, oh, can you help me out just translating? And I went into her transitional kindergarten class. And, transitional kindergarten kids, I was like, oh, my God, they're super cute. So I just started, I did parent conferences for her where I was translating. And that's where I kind of felt like I belonged there more. Being in that classroom, being around the kids, being silly with them, like as adults, everything's like so serious and this and that. But when you have when you're around kids, you're just like, I know, let's laugh. So that's what really got me going. But growing up, I knew I wasn't good at math. So I never thought going to college was a choice for me because I knew I couldn't pass those math classes, we have from geometry and stats. I was just like, oh my God, I could barely pass algebra. So those classes seem very impossible.
Yep.
So what I decided to do was I actually went to UCLA extension program where I actually got my certificate to teach English as a second language.
Oh, sweet.
So what I did with that is that I actually went abroad. I went abroad. I went to the Netherlands, and I was also around the Middle East. I had so much fun doing it. Like, I really found that's where I really fell more in love with the teaching profession, because even though my experience was always with, like, the kinder kids, when they finally put me with, like, the second graders, the third grader, I was like, okay, this is more for me, where I do know I want to work for elementary kids.
Yep.
And just like, kids are kids no matter where you go around the world. Yeah. And I had so much fun. So I came back to the States, and I told myself, you know what? Let's do this. Let's do this. I decided to go to Long Beach City College. Originally there, I started off as child development major, but when I was doing my classes, I'm like, this is not for me. So I remember always going to my counselor, and I was just like, yeah, I'm trying to be an elementary teacher. I get the whole child development. Don't get me wrong. I feel like it helped me to become a better mother, a parent, more understanding and the roots of things. So I feel like I'm better at that. But when it came to elementary children, there's just this different aspect from, yes, child development goes into it, but there's also something different. Right. And I couldn't put my fingers on it. So it was like 2018, and my counselor called me. She goes, hey, I know you're close to graduating, but we have this new elementary pathway teacher. It's an AAT.
Sorry, I'm gasping because this is fantastic. I really like the energy. Like, man, this is a great story so far.
Yeah, so I exactly felt like that when she personally called me. For a counselor to really call you, you must be like in their head. So she called you, Megan. Oh, she goes, this new professor, Megan Komplinsky, called. She has a new AAT pathway. She goes, I think this one's for you. She goes, but you're going to be here 2 more years. And those math classes that you're worrying about, she goes, tutoring. I cannot emphasize like tutoring. Talk to your professors. They will work with you. And I go like, all right, I changed my major. So I changed my majors, and I was always taking like 6 classes because I was on the mood. I had to go. And then this is kind of like a blessing in disguise type of thing. So when I was taking my math classes to officially transfer to Cal State Long Beach, right. COVID hit. So instead of being in person, it went to online. Right. And I felt like, I don't know what clicked in my head, but I felt like I was doing better online with math.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense to me. Yeah. Because I remember when I was in college, my class was the math teacher would, in a 1.5 hour class, teacher would write maybe an hour of equations. Here's how you do all these equations.
Right.
Any questions? After filling a chalkboard just with nothing but like equations and inequalities. Okay, cool. No questions. Okay, everybody go do this now.
Yeah.
So I feel that with you, it's really lucky that you're able to maybe transition to an online setting so you had more time to work on things.
Yeah, I felt like, so the number one thing that caused my anxiety when I was a child was elementary teachers used to give you those math facts pages. You have 5 minutes to do 20 questions, okay? And I'm just like, what? Not even 20 minutes. What are we talking about? It was more like 5 minutes, to be honest. You have 5 minutes. It's just like, oh my God, my fingers. Count on me.
And then you spend that first minute going like, like you're freaking out, and then you start feeling things you don't notice normally.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm sweating from my armpits or something. Where is this new? And like, it's like my head just literally felt like it was exploding when I saw these things, and I think that was like where the whole root of the cause of anxiety came from. Not just that too, is that like when I came to LA and all, like I was still, for some reason the numbers were in Spanish. I'm like, 1, 2, 2. I'm like, oh, be faster, brain.
But you talked about how sort of you were really lucky, and I'm glad that you were able to have found the silver lining with COVID, with how many things other people had to go through. What's your experience been like in terms of your education now that everything has shifted to sort of an online remote setting?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, at first it was, oh God, at first I was like, oh my God, like what am I going to do all the time? Because I have this son who was just starting preschool, getting him to a setting. How am I going to figure out this like small apartment and get 2 desks in here, and just figuring out time management, this and that. How am I going to do, my son can get needy sometimes where I'm just like, okay, I have to explain to him, Mama's in class. I am sitting here. That's your desk. I had to like help him out with what is Zoom, how to mute, what is thumbs up. My son still does thumbs up in class because that's what it's like.
Sweet.
He got programmed. And I'm like, God, I do the same thing too. Like, we got programmed into this shift. And all. But one thing I really liked about it is that I felt like the professors really, at Cal State Long Beach, at least I can say, like, even I was still at LBCC actually. And I felt like the professors really, like, did, like, this shift change where they were so much more understanding. And I really feel like, okay, because the ones that are parents and all, I feel like we're all at home.
Yeah.
You know how it feels. I had this one professor who was like, okay, my kids go to sleep by 9. You're at 9? Okay, 9 p.m. And I'm thinking like, so, you know, all those little things have really helped me accomplish, and all, especially when it came to my math. I cannot tell you how many times I probably saw my professor, Kimberly Winberg, at Cal State Long Beach. She was like, I'm a parent too, but I have 3. You have 1. Let's do this.
That's great that you have such a great support system and that you have teachers and faculty who can not only understand what you're going through, but they also empathize with it and they're willing to help you out and
Yeah.
really form a community.
Yeah, so it's funny because all that kind of led me here to like Rio Hondo. So I was working with Megan Komplinsky at LBCC. She was also she adapted this mentorship program over there. So the mentorship program, I did it, and Megan Komplinsky, who's now the chair of education and the reading department at LBCC, I got to know her like, I'm like, girl, we're like stuck together at this point. And because I became so close through her, through the mentorship program, and besides having her a professor, you know, I was just like, I want to do anything for you too. Nice. And then that led me actually to doing a student panel for the Teach for LA.
Oh.
So I didn't make the first meeting because I was having like issues and all that, but like I finally reached, I actually got an email from Leah, and she goes, okay, we're going to talk, and these are the questions. So all that led me to just a mentorship program that my my professor adapted from Rio Hondo, led me back to Rio Hondo.
What? The circle, it all goes around. That's what a community is.
Exactly. And also, so I met with Leah, and we did this this student panel type of thing from, you know, all the community colleges kind of had someone there. And I guess I'm so happy that I stand out to Leah. And then we just kind of got talking and all that. And she was like, yeah, she goes, you're very knowledgeable of things and all. And the number one thing is I tell Leah, because that was my journey too. So I know how it feels like to be that older community college student, that struggling student, that one that's bad at math. So I feel for them. And also, and luckily I developed a great relationship with Leah where I'm here being the student success coach.
Yeah, that's
and
fantastic.
Also, it's just, it's been an amazing journey, I gotta say. You know, meeting all these great people. And like I tell students all the time, like, you'll never know what you can get out of these mentors. My mentor led me to this amazing job.
That is true. That is amazing. So then let me ask you this, and I think it's really fantastic because I think opposite with me, I also went to community college. I didn't like it. I personally, and I said this earlier, I don't really like education in general, but it took one class for me to realize how amazing education and teaching can be. And thanks to that one teacher, I joined a teacher preparation program at Pasadena City College, my alma mater. Then I was able to go to Cal State LA, get my bachelor's and master's. Now I'm teaching. But for you, as a student who was most recently came from a community college and also is currently in college right now, what do you think is the one thing teachers need to have in order to really connect with their students, to really make a difference?
I really think that, one, I think, you know, go back, I think it's like for some professors and this and that, like, you know, because they need to kind of go back and think about, like, what was their struggling point when they were in college?
Right.
And I'll kind of remember and kind of, you know, empathize with the students and all that. You know, I get it. So we have, you know, in the end, we are adults where things shift, where we have responsibilities. We have to start growing, getting jobs, you know, learning how to drive, you know, these little things that I think, you know, professors should kind of take a step back and try to remember, like, you know, because, for example, I have a professor who's just like, well, you're late to class. Lock the door. You're late. You're absent. It's just like, we get late for a reason in LA. There's always a reason, especially when you have those like late classes. And I was one of those students. And it's just like, if there's a way that people need to remember, like, okay, and you don't know the full student's life situations. Reality is, and that's the reality that I always remember when I'm talking to students, when I'm talking to the mentors and this and that. I don't know your socioeconomic background. I don't know if you're safe at home. I don't, during the COVID times, people are saying like, I don't hate this topic, but reality is like child abuse, which is something very dear to me because I hate that topic passionately, and it's something that like I was hearing the numbers go up and this and that. And it's just like, parents don't know how to deal with their kids 24/7. And they got used to them going to school and where the teachers do the jobs. And even some of the teachers, like the elementary teachers, they're always with their students all the time, minus recess, lunch. Yeah. And so even them, they have to learn how to handle like the 28 students that they have, the 38 students that they have. But then, and then those dealing with those kids, the teacher also has to take in consideration of, well, I also don't know their home life neither.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think like when it comes to like the professors, the teachers, we have to be really thinking about what made the student be going through. Why is this kid mad? Maybe they didn't have breakfast and that's why they're mad.
Yeah, that's true.
And I knew I was one of those kids. Sometimes if I didn't go to school, like I'm missing lunch.
Yeah, same here. Right? Like those benefits from like those social support services that schools provide are so critical.
Right.
We only have a couple minutes left. So I want to take a minute right now to plug the program. Since you are a student success coach here at Rio Hondo and you work with CPTP, the community teacher, tripping over my words. So do you mind giving us a really quick pitch about why students should join CPTP?
First, I did a mentorship program myself, so it's very similar, very, very, very similar to it. We need, as you're going from high school where everyone's telling you what to do and you're coming into a college, you need guidance. Like I needed guide. Even though I was an older student, I still needed guidance. I still needed help. I was fortunate enough to have this amazing counselor. But when it comes to being into the whatever field that you go into the teaching, I feel like you need guidance. It's so complicated. What is this CBEST, this CSET, this RICA? What is all this? Why do I have to take all these classes? So I think this mentorship program, it really helps develop a good relationship of like kind of guiding them, because sometimes some of our students still need their hands held.
Yep.
And we have young students straight from high school and they need their hands held. And I'm so happy I will reach out to you and hold your hand for you, but only for so long. Yeah. Where I have to let you go because in the end, you're going to move on from Rio. The point is to move on to Rio Hondo and go to whatever university or whatever pathway that you decide to go to. So ultimately in the end, having these mentors really will help you. They will guide them. Also, not just that, is also like, I didn't know how much that mentorship program meant to me until also too, which I tell students, that is a recommendation. That is a recommendation. Who will know you more than your mentor?
That's great. I think that is a great final thought to have. Alia, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great having you. It was great hearing your stories. For those of you listening, we're going to end right here. And with Alia's, as she said, make sure if you want to get into education, get into mentorship. You might not be able to change the world, but you can change the world for one person. Hopefully we'll see you next week here at Capture the Passion. Thanks for listening. Bye.
CaPture.